Whoa, whoa! We're here live in Hollywood, California. That looked like whoa. Well, I had to get rid of that stream, that's for sure. Hollywood, California. A little bit of a heat wave going on here, a little muggy. People are starting to stab each other earlier in the day, trying to get it over with. Hello to one and all. A lot of people in the chat, new channel. Tommy Bridges is here. He loves the dice. There's certain people who it's a time in American culture, and we're going to get into dice's history and what it means to pop culture, which it does mean a lot more than people think it will, and I'll explain it. Eddie Gilmore here, obviously, Tommy Bridges. Anyway, the situation today is we're gonna do the secret life of Andrew Dice Clay, even though he's still alive. I reached out to Dice. I'm sure he's busy doing shit. Doesn't have time to do this little miniature podcast, but I'm sure I'll hear from him afterwards. Like I immediately heard from Carlin's daughter after the Carlin episode, of course, complaining that for some reason somebody else would do something about her dad who was not related to her. Anyway, this one here, we're going to do the dice, just to give you a schedule here. We're going to do the dice today, Cam Kinnison next week, and then finally I got that fat bastard joke man Martling to get off his ass for September 10th. He was on vacation or something, and we're going to get into that. And Jokey the Joke Man will be September 10th, and then the following week we're going to do my old friend Richard Lewis. And then there's a long list of people we're going to get into, in show business and pop culture, and into starting with all comedy. Just the people that I grew up digging, and we're not going to do Red Fox, but he was someone that Dice really looked up to and didn't receive the heat that Dice did. But before we get started, let's just do the sponsorship announcements for Biltong USA, which you see right here. This is my new bag that I got. This is my favorite flavor, Wagyu. And this is something that is, well, here's the other one. This is a little bit spicier if you like that. I can't handle the spice later on in the day. But this thing, I could sit here, go through an entire bag during a Dodger game, which could take 3 hours with this team. If I see any more of this bullpen coming into every single game, I'm going to have a heart attack. But I would try this. There's a secret code for Mark G. You get 10% off. Biltong USA. Anton has built a company, the king of all biltong. You see him on David's show and some of the other shows. But we've developed a very close relationship here, product and show-wise. And his wife and him and his 13 homeschooled slave children who escaped from South Africa in a boat. Took them about 6 months to a year to get here by motorboat, apparently then rowboat, then sailboat. They ended up in Texas. They built this company from the ground up. They are one of us. They dig the show. They are supporters. And I would appreciate it if you could support them, because then it's a two-way street. Oh, so this is their product. If you look on the website, you'll see they have hundreds of products. It's not just this. There's different chocolates and desserts and everything else. And we're going to get into their other products at the end of the show. Stick around for a surprise at the end of the show, which we'll get into some of their other products. But Biltong USA, it's the gourmet of beef jerky. You'll never regret it. I try to put it in the microwave for about 5-10 seconds just to soften it up and get the juices flowing. But you don't have to. You can eat it cold. Don't let your dog near you when you're eating it, because he'll attack you and rip your throat apart trying to get it. So Biltong USA, secret code, Mark G, 10% off. Ask for it by name. You see that picture down below. There's quite a different variants in different flavors and styles, but this is the one that I have come to rely on, if that makes any sense. But I haven't tried every one of them. I've only tried like 5 different ones, so I'm still going to dig into some of the other stuff that's there. Somebody's asking about Bill Hicks. Somebody's asking about this and that. Who gives a shit about Bill Hicks? No, we will do Bill Hicks. Um, the situation today for Dice. Let me just give you some background. I grew up very close to Dice, is the same neighborhood, with the same age. He grew up on Nostrand Avenue. I grew up on Knapp Street. We're going to get into it. This is when Dice was in third grade, just to get started with the show. When Dice was in third grade, he, not unlike Carlin, memorized all the curse words that he could find and hear on the streets. And at 11 years old, he had these curse words written down. But he also saw I think it was on NBC, the comeback special of Elvis, when he was 11. And he became infatuated with Elvis Presley. And I mean infatuated. Now, keep in mind, this is the comeback special of Elvis. This is an 11-year-old kid. This is not Elvis in his heyday. This is Elvis, coming back, black leather and everything else. And that is where Dice gets this from. Of course, it's Andrew Silverstein. It won't be Dice for a very long time. He will go by other names. But this photo here is Dice around that time, uh, performing, or mockingly performing with a fake microphone, like a lot of kids did. Um, his father ran a toy store in Sheepshead Bay. My father worked at Kennedy Airport, but at the age of 7, he watches the Ed Sullivan Show. And here he sees a group called the Beatles. And he doesn't care about Paul McCartney. He doesn't care about John Lennon. He doesn't care about George Harrison. The only one he cares about is Ringo Starr. And he becomes infatuated with drumming. And his father will get him a drum set at the age of 13. Let me just show you a picture of his father. This is Freddie Silverstein. He is an ex-boxer. He runs a toy store on Nostrand Avenue. He will later become a developer, and we'll get back into that in a second. But his dad will get is one will end up managing him, as opposed to just running a toy store. There'll be more to his story. He will move the family at one point to Staten Island and become like a developer of new housing in Staten Island, but they have to flee after a couple of months. Yeah, here's a picture of him. That's his mother, Jackie, on the right there in that leopard thing. There's Fred. This is a little bit later on. Maybe there's an earlier photo of his mother and father. I know there's this show this. This is how gorgeous his mother was. He worshipped his mother. She was a big mouth Brooklyn Jew, just like my mother. These were tough broads. These were broads that would fight with you. She had incredible good looks, and as did her husband, who was, Freddie. This is them later on, some wedding anniversary, I presume. And they had a daughter also named Natalie. He calls them the originals. The daughter, which is his sister Natalie, is a little older than him. And the two parents, is 4 of them altogether. And this is the most supportive parenting, supportive family I've ever heard of in my life. They yell. That's a sister. They yell a lot. They fight a lot, but they back this kid to the freaking hilt. And I mean, from beginning to end, this kid, and he's not spoiled. They are just amazing parents who supported this kid since the second he came out of the womb. Her too, all 4 of them. And, it wasn't a perfect family by any stretch of imagination. There was fighting. There was a brief separation. They got back together. They moved to Miami, where they spent about 11 months down there. They actually have to flee Staten Island because of the mob, who didn't like the fact that he was getting into building and developing homes. And they flee. I think, Andrew, they're in Staten Island from the age of 7 to 12. And he looks at it like it's the middle of Iowa, which at that period of time, it could be taken to be the middle of Iowa in terms of development and actual humans living there. Every year in school, when I was in public school, PS 194, we would go to Staten Island, and they would take us, and I'm sure they did this to him too. They would take us to a Dutch restoration village where they lived like it was the 1600s, in with churning butter, and they're wearing native costumes, and their homes are designed just like the Dutch did in the 15 or 1600s. And for years, I thought that's how people lived on Staten Island. I had no idea that this was a setup, for kids to be taken to from school. But that's a story for another day. When he is in sixth grade in school, he's pacing around. And this is an important, you're not getting these glasses, by the way. This is an important story. When he's in sixth grade, he's pacing around in the back of the room, and the teacher is yelling, sit down, please, Andrew, sit down. And he's pacing around, and he runs out of the classroom, disappears, and he comes back in a full Superman outfit, including the cape, and he runs around the room to the laughter and cheers of the entire class. And he's like doing the music, like dun 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 dun, and he's running around the class with the cape flying and everything else. The teacher's losing her shit, and the class is absolutely cracking up. And what happens is she calls his mother, and of course, his mother has to come up to school. And the class is still going on. And the mother, of course, gets into a fight with the teacher saying, what is wrong with you? All the kids are laughing. Why are you saying this? This is that my son is crazy and there's something wrong with my son. She gets into a verbal fight with the teacher, screaming at her in front of the entire class. Let me just take a sip of this. Now, the reason I mention that is because the teacher and her didn't, obviously they were going at it and the kids are laughing and he's in the Superman costume. Okay. When I was in fifth grade at PS 194, I had a teacher named Mrs. Bromberg. And I, every day to school, wore the full Superman costume underneath my school clothes, not the cape, but the full Superman costume. And the teacher saw the red S through my white shirt one day. And of course, the same thing, she had to call up my mother to come to school. And my mother gets into a fight with her in front of the entire class and smacks her in the face. And I said to my friend sitting next to me, Jeffrey Stearns, I said, that's why I wear the Superman costume. And everybody's cracking up. And the fact that Andrew Dice Clay did the same exact thing that I did in the same borough, in the same time period, one grade apart with the Superman thing it's just absolutely shocking to me that this was going on. And then he would go home like I would go home and we would dive off the bed, bunk beds, trying to fly. Not together, but separately in parallel universes. In fact, one kid in Brooklyn dove out the window to his demise, and the next year they put on the package, the Superman costume package. I swear to God, I remember this like it was yesterday. The words were printed on the plastic package. It said in black type, remember, kids, only Superman can fly. And I never forgot that because every kid in New York, and maybe everywhere, I don't know, was diving off their beds with the cape on, trying to fly. Now, I didn't wear the cape because it would have bunched up. I had the costume on. I don't know where he kept his cape, maybe in the bathroom or something. But this is the type of hijinks that were going on at the time. Now, he becomes a drummer, and I mean he just drums his brains out. He becomes like a miniature Buddy Rich. And at his own bar mitzvah, I don't know if we have a picture of this, but I don't know if we have a picture of that, but at his own bar mitzvah, he begins playing like Rolling Stone songs and Sly and the Family Stone, Honky Tonk Woman, Want to Take You Higher. And he puts together a band at the age of 13. And the following year, a year later, they see his parents are big Frank Sinatra fans. Absolutely. They go to the Garden when Sinatra plays the Garden. And he is really a big band drummer fan. He's into like Buddy Rich and the big band stuff, which has a lot of drumming, which is ironic because my father was a big band drummer who drummed with Tommy Dorsey and Basie and others as a big band drummer. There's just a lot of weird parallels between our lives. So he watches the Frank Sinatra special at home, and he goes to school, and he lives at 3202 Nostrand, apartment 4A. I lived at 2209 Knapp Street, apartment 4G, which is fairly close. He begins to His father ends up running a process serving business in downtown Brooklyn on Court Street called Royal Process Serving, because he's driven out of the building trades because of the mob. So he ends up running a process serving thing. Meanwhile, his neighborhood, unlike mine, was a lot rougher, and it was fairly close by. But the neighborhoods, you didn't go to these other neighborhoods when you were a kid in Brooklyn, simply because you had so many kids in your own neighborhood. You really didn't go over there. At least nobody I knew went over there. I mean, Peter Leitner, a friend of mine, went to Flatbush Avenue and with a hacksaw cut the heads off of, I think, 13 parking meters in one day. Took him back to his room and smashed him open with a sledgehammer. Took us all to Sid's Luncheonette on Plum First Street, where he bought us all lime rickeys and vanilla cokes. But Peter was really crazy. But anyway, every neighborhood had these guys, and they had Irish guys in his neighborhood, and they had some Irish guys in my neighborhood, kids that is. And 9 of these guys jump him, beat the living shit out of him, and really screw up his face. He really needed plastic surgery, Dice. His head was cut open. His mother takes him to the hospital, and they don't know who did it, but it was a group called the Shed, which was an Irish gang, and he goes to school and sees the leader of the gang in gym class. And his mother tells him not to get revenge on this kid, that the mother's going to deal with it with the father. And he's holding back. I mean, he's a big guy, but it was 9 of them jumping him and beating the living shit out of him, cutting his face open and his wrist. He needs stitches there too. He gets in these fights all the time, not because he is looking for him, but it's just a rough neighborhood. And, he gives as good as he gets. And he gets the shit beaten out of him by the 9 of them, right? And what happens is he finds the kid in his class, in gym class, and he sees the leader, and he tells his mother and father he's going to take care of it. So the mother says, don't do anything. The mother calls up, this is unbelievable. The mother makes a few phone calls. She's talking to various people about this kid. And she calls up the mother and father of that kid, and she says to him, I want you to hold on to the phone. I want you to go into his bedroom right now. And with a baseball bat, I want you to beat the living. She tells him what he had done to her son. She tells him the whole story, how he ended up in the hospital. The father and mother offer to pay his hospital expenses. She turns him down. And they said, what can we do for you? And she says, I want you to beat the living shit out of him. And I want you to hold this phone live with me on the other end while you beat the living shit out of your own son. And the guy goes, what? He says, now, she says, I want you to look out the window. He goes to the window. She said, there's a Lincoln Continental outside, a white car with 3 men sitting in it. If you do not beat the living shit out of your own son with this phone line open, these 3 men are going to come into your apartment, kick down your door, and beat the living shit out of you and your son. Okay. For the next 20 minutes, what she listened to were the father of the boy beating the living shit out of him with a strap in his own bedroom. And then she hung up the phone. That's the type of parents she had. And that's the type of parents I had. Because later that same year, myself and my friends, I think we were in 5th or 6th grade, got jumped by guys in the Gerritsen Beach gang in Marine Park. They stole our bikes, stole our money. There was about 8 of them. There was 3 of us. We were, many years younger than them. And all of the parents were terrified of the Gerritsen Beach gang because they had cut somebody's throat before. They had done some stuff in Gerritsen Beach that was not nice. And my mother, who is just like this Jackie Silverstein, said, And she drags me to the police. They find the kids. They put them on trial. We go to court, juvenile court, and they are weeping in court and sent away to Spofford, upstate New York, to juvenile detention. And the stories are similar, which is why I'm telling this story, because of the similarities of our parents and these tough Jews that came out of World War II. That's how they dealt with shit. Unlike today, which is a whole different world. But Andrew Silverstein begins playing the drums, and he begins to have sexual feelings for the first time as a 13-year-old. He plays his own bar mitzvah, and then he begins a period of masturbating around the house involving every single thing from fur gloves to fur coats, and just goes into a real humorous description. If I remember years ago, him talking about it. Um, but the situation is he goes to Pips one night, and Pips is something where on Emmons Avenue, which used to be a sushi place. He goes at 15 years of age. He goes to Pips, and he sees comedy for the first time at the age of 15. They go as a family. They did everything together as a family, and he's in two different bands at this time. He's going to James Madison High School, which is nearby, and he looks at this comic room and he sees comedy for the first time, and he feels that this is something he may get involved in, but he really looks at himself as a drummer, and he's in two school bands, and they do a big band version of the theme from Mod Squad. He gets the drum solo on there, and he ends up getting an award for the drum solo, which is like some long Buddy Rich type drum solo. And he ends up going up to the Catskills, where he becomes Clay Silvers, and he's playing in a band at the Del Mar Hotel, where he will also have his first loss of his virginity. And he drops out of high school, doesn't go to college. I think he went for a week or something. Uh, and then he dropped out of that too. But when he comes back to New York, he comes back to Brooklyn, everybody believes that he's a dead ringer for John Travolta. Now, why is that in the air? Because there's a show on TV called Welcome Back, Kotter. Now, this is him. I mean, look how handsome this guy is. This is, I think, when he's like 17, 18 years of age. This is a little bit longer, but he starts to goof on girls saying that he's Joey Travolta. In fact, he goes, this is great. He goes to Studio 54 and he dresses up as John Travolta, goes to the doorman and says, I'm here. He goes, who's here? He goes, it's me. He goes, who are you? He goes, it's John Travolta. And the doorman goes, get out of here. He went inside 3 hours ago, you piece of shit. So he goes into a pizza place with his friends, and there's a bunch of girls there, and he makes believe that he's Joey Travolta, John Travolta's brother, and everybody buys it. He ends up going home with the girl, and he's in her basement. Her mother's upstairs sleeping. The girl's they're both like 17. And he writes with a magic marker on a wall, like best wishes from Joey Travolta in giant letters. Maybe there's a picture of him where he's looking Travolta-esque. Yeah, take a look at this. He would have the spit curl, and this is in Pips, where he will begin to develop an act. And I don't want to get into that yet because he dresses up and he goes to see a movie called Grease. And the night that he sees Grease, it changes his life. He becomes enamored with the song and dance of Travolta with the automobile segment where he's dancing on the hood of the car. And he goes back to this theater 20 times. There's no video back then. There's no internet. So he literally takes in every screening of Grease, with notes, with a notepad of every move by Travolta. And he rents a studio, and he will perform in this studio privately. He will privately perform. Now, he is a brilliant mimic since the time he is 9. He's just one of those kids. I don't have it. I mean, I can impersonate people, but he is impeccable. He starts doing the Nutty Professor. He does Jerry Lewis, and he begins to do Vinnie Barbarino, like I said, from Welcome Back, Kotter. And he's a dead ringer for Travolta. So it works even more effectively, and he's using it to pick up chicks in Brooklyn. Very effective technique. And he is now he's going from this Jerry Lewis impersonation, and he begins to switch it to John Travolta from Grease. Okay, so he rents this studio. This is crazy. He rents a recording studio, rehearsal studio, and he goes in there for 3 weeks. And he brings in the music on a boombox, doesn't let anybody in, won't let anybody see it. And he begins to develop this one act. And the one act is him as the nutty professor and impersonating Jerry Lewis with the buck teeth and the glasses and the shabby clothing. And he begins to work on that. Um, and then in the dark, he will reappear as after he drinks the magic potion, he will reappear as John Travolta in Grease and do this is him as Travolta. Yeah, this was the second part of what I'm describing. Before that, he will be the nutty professor and he will have the clothing over this. And then he would rip it off. He'd turn around in the dark and then the music would come up and he will do the dance numbers, the singing, every single part of that segment he will do as John Travolta in Grease. This becomes his act and he hones this one act. You know, he could do De Niro. He does an incredible Stallone. He does all of these Italian. He does all of these different actors who Eric. What's his name? What's his name? Sister, and he does them all impeccably well. Christopher Walken. He does. You know, just but he doesn't feel that that's going to get him anywhere. This thing he refines into an act that kills, that really kills. And his dad says, you know what? Let me manage you. This $50 a night bullshit. And he goes to Pips. And there's a flyer here, an old flyer that I found from Pips. I don't know if you could, this thing here, this is Andrew Clay as John Travolta. This is the original flyer. This is from 1978 for people at home. I don't know where you were, if you were even born, but this is at the end of Knapp Street down there, Emmons Avenue. And this is also in Sheepshead Bay, where I'm from. And he begins to do this act. They flip out at Pips. Again, Pips is owned by George Schultz. It is the first comedy club in America. And it was a sushi place. It started in like 1946 and becomes literally the first comedy club in America. George Schultz coins the phrase for Rodney, who worked there, I don't get no respect. That's from George Schultz. And Rodney got it from him. Rodney will become the mentor for Dice Clay. He will become his entertainment father figure for the rest of his life. Anyway, he said the day he saw Grease, it really changed his life, which is really true. That's September 13th, 1978, that from that flyer. And he goes into New York before that for a couple of weeks to see just comedy clubs because he has no idea. And he says they all suck, except he sees a guy named Joe Piscopo at a club in New York City. And he says, Piscopo's the only real guy that I saw who was a real comic. And Danny Zuko is the character, by the way. For those of you who remember, the bit was Grease Lightning. That's right. He gets a 5-minute standing ovation. At Pips, they go absolutely freaking crazy. They absolutely go berserk, turning over the tables. His whole family's there. They almost ripped the joint apart. That's how the excitement was for this event at Pips. So they offer him like $50 a night. His father says, fuck that. And his father begins to book him at discos. His dad says, you can work these massive discotheques that don't have the restriction of having 50 to 100 people limits in the size of the club. And keep in mind, there's no comedy clubs. Nothing really exists. There's a place where this guy sees Piscopo in a bar in 78. I don't know where he was performing, but his dad, Fred Silverstein, begins to book Andrew Clay into the Electric Circus, the Fun House, these various places where he's getting $800 a night right out of the chute. And then he gets booked at a place called the Lincoln Motel, which is in Staten Island. And it's a mob joint, and they begin to run ads on the radio. And this is absolutely true. They begin to run ads on the radio saying, come to the Lincoln Motel, which had a separate room for shows. Come to the Lincoln Motel and see John Travolta this Saturday night performing Grease Lightning. And Dice has a heart attack going, Dad, this is insane. They're going to sue us. They're going to go crazy. And his dad goes, nah, don't worry about it. It's a mob joint. They'll take care of it. And in fact, he goes and does the whole thing. And the second he becomes Jerry Lewis, part of the plan is that the act is so obnoxious that he wants them to boo him, which is what the audiences always do. That's what he wants. And then when he becomes Travolta in Grease Lightning, they go berserk out of relief because the act is so tight and smooth and perfect. So it's an interesting dichotomy that he creates on his own intentionally. And he also does Stallone and Pacino and all these other characters. There used to be a guy in New York. I don't know if anybody knows this. There was a show called the Joe Franklin Show, and basically anybody could get on the Joe Franklin Show. You could literally show up and be on the show at any time. I had friends who just walked in and he put them on the show. He goes to Joe Franklin, and Joe Franklin says, "Look, I can't put you on the show." He does his impersonations. He says, "But if you go to the Fireside Lounge in Queens and win this contest, I'll have you open for an act that I'm managing called Tiny Tim." Now, as people know, Tiny Tim became a big deal, and Dice wins the contest, of course. And next thing you know, he's opening for Tiny Tim. He then decides at this time that New York and Brooklyn and Pips is too small for him because he is killing it in Pips. He is destroying the place, and he's getting calls from friends to come out to LA. And he decides, after some thought about this quite a bit, to go out to Los Angeles. And I think he's about 22 at this time. And he ends up at the La Jolla Comedy Store, which is owned by Missy Shore. And her daughter, Sandy, is running it. And she won't let him on, of course, because he just showed up from San Diego. And he has sex with her immediately, Sandy Shore. And the next thing you know, he's on stage killing. And he goes to Hollywood and goes to the Comedy Store, which is owned by Mitzi Shore. And he gets I want to say a 3 minute to 4 minute segment by the MC. And he goes up there and he does 20 minutes, 20 minutes. And the comics and the MC are furious. You'll never work again, and blah, blah, blah. He goes into the men's room, and this guy comes up to him and says, "You're never going to work again. You're supposed to do 3 minutes. I'm telling you, you did 19 fucking minutes. You're finished in this business." And that guy was Gary Shandling. The next day, he gets a call from Mitzi Shore Dice, and he goes to her house, and she signs him to a contract. So everything he does violates all the norms at that time. Not that there were many norms, but he will not cooperate. He has ambition and confidence beyond anything measurable on the face of the earth regarding show business. His confidence comes from his parents, who, like I said, supported him from right out of the womb. So Mitzi puts him in her house, Crest Hill, right above the store. There's a house up there where the comic stayed. And in that house will be Argus Hamilton, Bill Hicks, Yakov Smirnoff. He begins to try to help Yakov Smirnoff. There's a guy named Ollie Joe Prater who's up there. And they live like animals. There's a guy who moves into the house named Sam Kinison, and him and Sam Kinison hit it off, and they will go to Rock and Roll Ralph's on Sunset, a store that I used to shop at when I lived on Fuller in Hollywood when I first came out here. And they will steal pork chops together, shoving them down their pants and running out the door. Him and Sam really become very close friends at this time. And Dice will only go on last at the Comedy Store because he doesn't want anyone to follow him. So he's performing at the end of every night. He couldn't care less. He really doesn't care about anything about stand-up comedy. In fact, he said it was a means to an end to become a movie star. And his mother and father wanted him to become a movie star. And he himself creates this comedy act specifically for acting, not for comedy. Although it's brutally funny, although it's brutally dirty, he goes on Don Kirshner's rock concert and for the first time does 13 minutes in his leather garb, as we now know, the leather dice. Before that, yeah, this will be in at Dangerfield for the special. But yeah, that's the look. That's the character. He creates dice out of thin air. He gets married at 26 to a girl. He got pregnant. He took her back. He went back to Brooklyn. Kathleen Swanson. She wasn't pregnant. They get married at the Golden Gate Inn on Knapp Street, right down the street from my place. But he's struggling in LA. This is his final wife, his third wife, which I think is Valerie Vasquez from 2010, 2014. The first wife was Kathy Swanson, 84 to 86, I believe. The second wife was Kathleen Monica, who was actually the mother of his children, Trini, 1992 to 2002. And then there was Valerie Vasquez, and then currently Eleanor Kerrigan. But let me tell you this: he is not making it at the Comedy Store. He's doing these late night segments and can't get arrested, although he's under contract with her, stealing pork chops and cooking them up. Now he doesn't do drugs and he doesn't drink, but everyone else in this house, including Kinnison and all these guys, are obviously out of their minds. And his whole thing is sex. Maybe there's a picture of the three of them together here. I don't know what we got here. Yeah, there's Sam and Dice, and I don't know who the guy in the middle is, but this is around that time period with beret wearing Kinnison, will later be Kirchhoff wearing Kinnison. And we're going to get into Sam next week in depth. But anyway, so they are not doing well, and what he does, Dice, is this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable, and I'm actually using his phrase. He will go to massive movie theaters in Hollywood on a Friday night just before the movie. And he did this first on the spur of the moment. He jumps up on stage and starts doing his act. And people are dying. The movie's not going yet. The movie's not going. He does this. He does his act, the nursery rhymes and all that shit, to a movie audience. College. He starts out in Westwood at UCLA at that theater there in Westwood. And then he starts doing it in restaurants. He'll go into a restaurant to eat, stand up at the restaurant. He did this at Musso and Frank's. The owner called the police. The police showed up. They removed him from the restaurant. The crowd started booing as they removed him because they were cracking up. The balls on this guy were so big, they could have crushed the earth. I mean, just the biggest balls in show business. He's nobody at this point. And he begins to get some representation because of all these things. And what happens is there's a young comedian special that was being run by Rodney Dangerfield back at Dangerfield's 1987. It's called the Young Comedian Special. And Dice auditions for this, and he gets selected for this. This is the biggest break of his career. November 1987, Dangerfield. If you can put up that picture again, this is from that event. He does, I want to say 9 minutes, 8 minutes that'll change his life. He knows it's so good because he's already taped it that on Thursday in Hollywood, afterwards, a couple of weeks later, he takes out a full-page ad in Variety with a poem on the side with a picture of him saying that the next day, on Monday, over the weekend, he's going to be the hottest thing in Hollywood. He's looking for representation. Everyone, Variety laughs. On Friday night, that special airs. And by Monday morning, he was the hottest thing in Hollywood in decades. Everyone's calling to sign him. That's how much that segment killed. And he can only thank Rodney Dangerfield for that. I recommend you take a look at this segment. It's about 8.5, 9 minutes long. Absolutely Dice at his peak. Now, he rehearses this at night at the Comedy Store to like 5 drunks and 6 people. Couldn't care less how many people there because all he's doing is working on the act. He couldn't care less who's there. Does not care. His hero, this is when there's him with Billy Idol. This was getting into Ford Fairlane almost. His hero, really, comedy-wise, is Don Rickles. Although his hero in terms of career is Eddie Murphy. He worships Eddie Murphy. And he now is before he does this special, he after he does this special, he does a this is kind of interesting. He does a breakthrough at the Big Brothers Association banquet dinner in Hollywood. Now, this banquet dinner in Hollywood is all men only because it's Big Brothers Association. It's every star in Hollywood in a tuxedo. 1988. It's a fundraiser, and it's Hollywood royalty that really comes in there and does this. And he destroys the place. He comes in his leather and absolutely, I mean, people are just crying. There's people there, every major actor, every major producer. The by the way, the special I'm talking about, the Dangerfield special, is 1988. It's called Nothing Goes Right. There was a 1987 Young Comedian special, which is his first exposure. But this thing, Nothing Goes Right, 1988, Dangerfield Showcase, is really the thing that kills for him. So 88 really begins to put him on the map. He keep in mind, he is getting bit parts in movies, though. I have to say, he was in a movie called Wacko in 1982. I don't know if the people know what Wacko was, but Wacko was, some low budget horror film. He's doing that in 80, I want to say 86 and 87. He gets a part, a fantastic part in Crime Story with Dennis Farina's in this. It's directed and produced by Michael Mann. Here he is in Crime Story. He plays a guy named Goldman, Mitch Goldman, I think his name was. And he really nails this part. The pilot episode is directed by Abel Ferrara, by the way, a little bit of trivia. And different people directed different episodes. But Caruso, there's what's his name from JFK. Farina makes his bones here. David Caruso makes his bones here. Dice is the muscle for the Godfather, the Jewish Godfather from Miami. And I think it's Max Goldman. I think that was his character's name. This goes on for a couple of years, and what happens is they pull the plug on at NBC. This is prime time on NBC. It is super expensive, and Michael Mann has to tell him that they've pulled the plug, and he can't believe it. They signed him for 5 years, by the way, $2,500 a week. So it's not bad. But they pulled the plug after 2 seasons because it was so freaking expensive, and he's got to go back again. In other words, the stand-up is a means to an end for him. This is what he wants to do. He wants to be in Crime Story. He wants to be on these shows. He wants to be a movie star. He wants to be a guy who can do those types of episodes and also do movies. The Dice thing is to get attention for himself. And boy, does he get attention. Because after this special, he gets everyone in Hollywood calling him. And he gets a call from Sandy Gallen. Now, Sandy Gallen is the manager for everybody. Dolly Parton, every big actor and show business person has Sandy Gallen as a manager. Sandy Gallen is gay. And then he contacts David Geffen, who is gay, who then contacts Barry Diller, the head of Fox, who is gay. And David Geffen, I think they're just enamored with the guy sexually. This is my personal. I've always thought this personally, because the idea of the 3 major gay show business machas going after this one guy is bizarre, to say the least. So David Geffen gives him the record deal, and the record is produced by Rick Rubin, the guy who literally invents rap and the Beastie Boys and everything else. Rick Rubin comes to him with his long beard and long hair, and Dice doesn't know who he is, and he says, "I want to give you a record. I want to produce your record." And he gets a 5-record deal because of this Dangerfield's showcase special, which was called "Nothing Goes Right," by the way, in 1988. And he gets a 5-record deal with Rick Rubin. And the first album comes out, goes gold immediately. this is the second album. I'll get to that in a second. The first album is Dice Rules. The second album is The Day the Laughter Died. Um, the first album goes through the roof. The second album is called The Day the Laughter Died, and it is a cult favorite. It is, just to explain it, because it has to be explained. Dice Rules is him at Dangerfields on New Year's Eve into New Year's Day doing a multi-hour stand-up improvisational uh, throwdown to a very small Dangerfield audience of people who have hung on through the night. This is like 2 o'clock in the morning now at Dangerfield. Very small audience. And it is the bluest of the blue of Dice. And he presents this album to David Geffen, and Geffen calls him on the phone to come in with Rick Rubin. And Geffen says, "What the fuck is this?" And he says, "What do you mean? It's the album, the second album." And he goes, "There's no people on here." And he goes, "Yeah, it was in Dangerfields. It was New Year's Eve, and I think it's very funny." And Geffen goes, "Well, nobody's laughing." And he said, "Well, it's like an anti-comedy album." And he goes, "Did I pay you for an anti-comedy album?" He goes, "No, you gave me a 5-record deal. This is the second record." And so Geffen is bumming out and screaming at him. And he says, "Let me ask you one question, Dice." And he says, "Yeah, what is it, David?" He says, "Why does it have to be a double album?" Which is what it was. And it's now considered a cult favorite. Now, keep in mind, it goes gold in 5 days. Whatever you think of The Day the Laughter Died, and I know it's got a lot of critics out there, it goes gold within 5 days. And that's how fast the album sells. 4 days. Let me take it back. It's the biggest selling comedy album of the year of that time, of all time at that time. Now, keep in mind, 1986, he does Pretty in Pink with Molly Ringwald, John Cryer. It's written by John Hughes, a guy I replaced at National Lampoon. And maybe there's a poster for some of these movies we're putting up now. I just want to show you the movies that he did. Yeah, in this one, he tries to tell who's ever the creative person to call him Dice in the movies, because he's invariably playing bouncers and dice-like people. And they go, "Sure, we'll call you Dice," because he wants to enhance the brand. So in these movies, his name is actually Dice. He does Making the Grade with Judd Nelson. He does Casual Sex, which was produced by Ivan Reitman. This thing is terrible. This one, well, he ends up with the girl. This is kind of interesting because it is the reverse in a way of Pretty in Pink. He ends up with the girl, and they rewrote the ending for him. Ivan Reitman called him up, and they rewrote the third act where he could be the love interest and come up and become the hero of the movie, which is kind of interesting. I like it better than some of the other movies, but he does the Casual Sex, and like I said, he's working in these little films. He does a thing called Brain Smashers with Kathy Moriarty, but that's like not until 95. Okay. He gets this role as like I said on which is this? Oh, Brain Smasher. Yeah, this one is with Terry Hatcher, and he has like a fling with Terry Hatcher. Oh my God. In September in 1989, to get back to this is a little bit later, Brain Smasher. But to get back to 1989, September 1989, he's asked to do an introduction for Cher at the MTV Video Music Awards, right? And September 89, he goes up, and let me just set this up for you because it was very, very controversial at the time. And Dick Clark is producing. Arsenio Hall is the host. Thank you, Floridian. Arsenio Hall is the host. Thank you so much. But Dick Clark is producing it. So Dick Clark comes up to him, and Dice doesn't know anything. He just knows I'm going to introduce Cher, calling her, "Please welcome Cher, the last Puritan." He even knows what that means. But Dick Clark comes up to him, and he says, "You may have to stretch this out a bit." He goes, "Stretch what out a bit?" He goes, "Well, Cher might not be ready, and maybe Arsenio can come over and do something with you." And he says, "Look, I don't know what you're talking about, but nobody does anything with the dice. I don't need Arsenio's help." I'll do whatever I'm going to do, but I don't need anybody helping me do anything. And he realizes that the chair's not ready. So he begins to do this set. Maybe there's a picture of the two of them together here. This is, oh yeah, this is her and Dice. Wow, wow, look how pretty she looks there. Um, she will come out and sing "Turn Back Time," by the way. But anyway, so Dice starts riffing, and it's kind of dark and blue, and he does a nursery rhyme. And keep in mind, this is basic cable, folks. This is going out to hundreds of millions of people, and MTV loses their shit, but not as much as Dick Clark, who has to be wrestled to the ground physically by Arsenio Hall to prevent him from getting at Dice Clay while Dice is performing his nursery rhymes live on basic cable, as blue as you could possibly get. The next day, MTV, they call him into his office. By the way, Sandy Gowan calls him at home that night, and Sandy Gowan's having a heart attack as manager. And he says, I hope to God that what I watched tonight was somehow only coming through my television alone. And Dice goes, he's oblivious to the problem. He's totally oblivious. And they issue a lifetime ban. MTV issues a lifetime ban against Dice Clay. And he says, what do I give a shit? I'm not a singer. And he says, let them ban me for life. What do I care? And he's actually right. The publicity that he gets from this is enormous. And this is September in '89, and then he introduces her, ladies and gentlemen, the Last Puritan. And in January of '89, right before this, HBO special, The Diceman Cometh, had come out. And March of '89 was the Dice album, which leads us to, I believe, February 1990, which is an important part of Dice's life. February 1990. Okay, February 1990, he will play Madison Square Garden. Now, the idea of a comic at that time selling out Madison Square Garden for 2 nights with 38,000 seats. This is insane. In February 1990, he will sell out 19,000 and 19,000 back to back within 30 minutes of tickets going on sale. And he will break all records. And he had gone to the Spectrum and sold out the Spectrum in Philly. And he had also played another arena before that, but this was New York. So it was a bigger deal. And I, of course, was working with MTV at the time. I had a magazine called MTV Magazine, and I decided to do some coverage. Maybe I show the cover of that month's issue. This is my MTV magazine that I was editor and publisher of, working with MTV. I had my own separate company. I didn't want to work for those douchebags. But this was the cover of that month's issue in July. Then if you go inside of this issue, there's a 2-page spread that I wrote on Dice. This is from the Diceman Cometh's show on HBO, I believe, and that's what I was working on it for. And then there's a third page with the dice. Anyway, so I was close to MTV during this entire debacle. I remember pretty well. And this particular 2 nights at MSG, Madison Square Garden, was totally insane. I just have to tell you that because I was there. And I'm in the green room with his parents, to come full circle with the story, with Fred and Jackie Silverstein. And I'm in there with his parents. I mean, that's the way it is. And we're talking, and they're totally normal. They remind me of my parents, and we're kibitzing in the green room. The show is going on outside. Dice is killing it, hickory dickory dock, and the poems and everything else. And it's just destroying the place. I mean, it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. I would look out on the side of the stage when he was performing, and it was just crazy. Absolute freaking bedlam. And the second night, he actually had his band. I don't remember the first night with the band, but the second night, he had his band, and he would end the show with his band. Yeah, we saw that. That's cool. We saw he would end the show. Maybe you could. There's a I don't know what we could put up, but there's very few. There is a Dice film that comes from this, which I'm going to talk about because it is filmed for 20th Century Fox. Um, but he would end the show with a rock band playing and doing Elvis tunes. After being completely exhausted, drenched in sweat, he would go up on stage and he'd have a band there with horns and everything else. Super tight band. Anyway, I'm with his parents backstage, and with a journalist with press pass or whatever, and I see him come through the door to greet his parents. And as he comes through the door, I'll never forget this as long as I live. He literally, in front of my eyes, visually and audio wise, transitioned personality wise from this character, Andrew Dice Clay, to Andrew Silverstein, changing and going back to his normal voice and talking to his parents as if he was still in his bedroom on Nostrand Avenue and they were hugging him and kissing him. The, Seeing that transition from that character to a normal person was so shocking to me. I never forgot it as long as I lived, and I'm telling you about it today because we're doing this show. It was absolutely amazing. There was nobody there. I mean, the people in the green room. There's a few people in there, but I was basically in there with his parents, and I was like a fly on the wall to see this. Obviously, I shook his hand, whatever. Nothing really happened. He was, more excited to talk to his own parents, of course. But the transition was so amazing. Anybody who says that's him, and we're going to get into Nora Dunn in a second at Saturday Night Live, which is coming up next, because this dimwit believed that this was this guy. As odd as that could sound from a performer, she believed that Andrew Dice Clay was Andrew Dice Clay, which is shocking to me to this day that this schmuck actually believed it, despite the cast telling her to not do this. Now, okay, the show kills. It's absolutely unbelievable. And now he is supposed to do May 12th, 1990, which is really a couple of months afterwards. He is going to host a Saturday Night Live. And he has never been on Saturday Night Live. This is a picture. So that week, as you know, a guest host will come in and work with the staff. And he's not a fan really of the show, but he's down for doing it. I mean, there's other stand-ups in there, Dennis Miller, John Lovitz. There's other guys in there who he likes. And this is one of the sketches they did as the Outsiders. There's what's his name on the far left over there with the wig on, who used to be in my gym. He wasn't so happy with Dice, but Lovitz loved him, and all the rest of these guys loved it. But nevertheless, that week, Nora Dunn decides to invoke some sort of privilege and protest the show making national headlines. And Sinead O'Connor, the bald-headed Irish chick who ripped up a picture of the Pope, decides to walk out with her and protest, the two of them. And now protesters are starting to surround the building. They've infiltrated behind enemy lines, like Code Pink or something, and they're dressed up like him, and they're in the crowd. They will be physically removed during the live broadcast. NBC is shitting in their pants. They've got a 7-second delay. They're still worried about the content of what Dice is going to do, but it's Lorne's show. It's Lorne Michaels' show, and Lorne is vouching for him. Lorne comes into the dressing room. This might have been like Thursday night or something, and says that Nora Dunn has quit the show. And he says, well, what do you want from me? And he says, she did it because of you. So Dice goes, so what do you want from me? There's nothing I could do about it. It turns out Kevin Nealon wears a wig. Just so you know. And when you see him, we had a softball team in New York, and he was in the locker room. He wasn't on the team, but he would get dressed and he'd take the wig off. But yes, Jeremy Piven, too. I'll give you another free rap zets. So Dice says, what do you want from me? I don't even know the broad, and it turns out the whole thing was bullshit. She had 2 weeks left on her contract. This is the MS. This is the truth about Nora Dunn. This is why you tune into the show. Nora Dunn had 2 to 3 weeks left on her contract, and Lorne Michaels told her he wasn't renewing it. So get even with Lorne Michaels having nothing to do with Andrew Dice Clay. She decided to blow up the show by doing this to get at Lorne Michaels. Now, Sinead O'Connor also confessed on Arsenio a year later that she went along because her management company told her to do this. She didn't have a dog in the hunt either and regretted it. So this is just the explanation of what was going on. Now, in the audience are people dressed up live, wearing like Andrew Dice Clay zebra jacket look-alike things, and like Code Pink or whatever, they stand up and they get dragged out by the police during the live show. The protesters ring the building, and this is not going well. So the situation becomes tense. But that being said, Dice doesn't do drugs. Dice doesn't drink. He's a total pro. The monologue is so funny. Not the monologue. The cold opening of the show with John Lovitz. It's a takeoff on It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, where if I remember correctly, Lovitz is playing the devil, and Andrew Dice Clay has never been born, like the movie with Jimmy Stewart. And he takes him around and shows him what has happened because he wasn't born. And one of the things that happened because he wasn't born was Nora Dunn didn't protest the show. And unfortunately for Nora Dunn, she came to the show and she was killed by these two giant amplifiers that fell off the stage and crushed her. And they had these feet sticking out like the Wicked Witch of the West from the movie, Gone with the not Gone with the Wind, whatchamacallit, with the Munchkins, and her legs are sticking out, and she is. They're making fun of Nora Dunn, which is absolutely precious. And Sinead O'Connor, whatever happened to her, who knows? But they made the best of it. The cast and crew, they had a good time. And then she was never brought back, as Lorne had told her, having nothing to do with Dice Clay. Okay, so apparently a feud starts between Kinison and Dice. Kinison, who is ahead of him on the curve, could not handle the success of Dice Clay. Neither could some other people. Kinison and him begin to have a feud about Dice's success. He begins to call Dice a fraud. He makes anti-Semitic statements about Dice. And Dice has always said, this is Kinison's problem, not my problem. This will spill over into the Stern Show, where certain people on the Stern Show will talk about it. Sit home for years. I used to pray that one day you would mention that. Years. And then I did it, and then he dumped me. Like a cold potato. See? You saw it? You can't let it go. Right. I'm letting it go. Could you beat me on these dump us? Could you forget about that? I just wanted to give you a flavor of, because I have a vast collection of digital recordings of the Stern stuff with Kinison and him from 1990 era when they were on the show with Gilbert. I was just there at that time. And it's poor audio. Well, you know what? Go fuck yourself, you piece of shit. Anyway, the albums come out, they go gold, and now there is a movie that's kind of dumped in his lap called The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. The Adventures of Ford Fairlane is written by a friend of mine from the LA Weekly named Rex Weiner. And Rex Weiner, there was a novel and there was also pieces in the Weekly. It is a kind of a rock and roll detective, where if the closest thing I could think of is Lethal Weapon by Shane, where you've got a crazy cop, he's a private eye, and it's a comedy, it's an action comedy. And it's an attempt to capture this zeitgeist at the time. It's directed by Rennie Harlan, who's not the right director for this. It should have been Richard Donner or somebody like that, who had the ability to direct these things, like a Tony Bill or somebody. Rennie Harlan was from fucking Finland. They didn't know what was going on. But nevertheless, the script is written, and Dice is so hot that 20th Century Fox greenlights the movie. Now, Barry Diller, also a gay guy, is running Fox. You've got this troika of gay guys. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Also running Fox the record label with Geffen, and his manager, Sandy Gowan. Here's a little a piece from a little show card from the movie. The movie has been eradicated from the face of the earth. You know what I mean? It has, and I'm going to tell you what happened with this movie. The first thing he does is he brings Gilbert in, and Gilbert becomes this. He plays a Howard Stern shock jock in the movie, Gilbert, and he will be killed very shortly in the movie. He has Zuzu Pitts. I don't know, it was Pitts, it was Pedals, Scott. Remember, baby. Nice reference. Koala burgers. That's also funny. Yeah. Anyway, so Rennie Harlan, who was in between diehards with Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis will be in The Last Boy Scout, by the way, another Shane Black script. What they don't have is a Shane Black script, unfortunately for them. They have this piece of shit nobody script and a novel. So Andrew Dice Clay is so hot that they put Gilbert in there and they put some others in there, and Wayne Newton is the evil guy, and then the Freddy Krueger guy is in there, and the guy from the Warriors is in there, and they make this movie. And it's all shot in Hollywood, and it's got things blowing up. It's a big budget movie. It was $22 million in 1989. So do the math on what it would cost. Maybe it was $100 million movie today, but the movie tests through the roof. They go into the valley and they do multiple testing of the teen audience, the target audience that they want. And that target audience just loves it. They just go absolutely nuts. And there's a little kid in there. There's a koala bear. That's a robotic koala bear that gets hung a little later. Thank you for the membership. Oh, thank you. I just saw that. Thank you so much. The koala bear's his sidekick. There's a lot of good stuff in the movie. I like the movie, and I never disliked the movie. However, the critics who were out to kill and loaded for bear because of their perception of Dice were not happy with the movie. But that being said, the movie premiere is so enormous that they rent out the entire LA Forum to show it to 15,000 people on a giant screen with Dice driving into the LA Forum in the Ford Fairlane car that you see in the movie. That was the planning for the world premiere of the movie. So Dice begins to do press for this movie, which is why he ends up on SNL, which is why he's doing all this stuff. It's really designed to Robert Englund. That's right. It's really designed to all promote the movie. And all of a sudden, these three gay guys begin to get death threats from the gay lobby that is protesting Dice as a person. And Dice becomes the first canceled pop culture figure in American history, way before the Me Too movement, way before any of the Louis C.K., way before all this stuff. Dice's career gets canceled by this organized gay protest that, despite their support for him, Barry Diller calls him into his office, and Barry Diller tells him, I can't take the death threats any longer. Geffen tells him the same thing. That they're all getting death threats. They're all under enormous pressure by their gay brethren. And they pull the plug on the premiere. They pull the plug on the financial support of the movie. They pull the plug on the movie's released. It opens large, but they can't and do not provide any financial support for the movie, ostensibly intentionally killing it, which may have been corporate malfeasance at that point, because they admit they're doing it because of the protests. It becomes a scalp that will later be used for others down the road during the Me Too movement. Lenny wasn't canceled. Lenny died. And Tone Loc is in it. Yeah, Tone Loc. There's a lot of weird people. Okay, so Gilbert plays this shock jock, and I go to the premiere in New York with my date to see the premiere of the movie. My date is Gilbert Gottfried. So I'm sitting there with Gilbert Gottfried watching the movie Ford Fairlane with Gilbert. And Gilbert gets killed fairly early in the movie, and he goes, "Let's get out of here. I don't want to see any more of this. I'm already dead." So me and Gilbert have to leave the movie because Gilbert's dead, and he doesn't want to watch the rest of the movie. He doesn't care. So me and Gilbert leave, and I never saw the movie till years later because I only saw up to that part. Which the scene with Gilbert is at a radio station where he's electrocuted, and there's a murder plot. It's a film noir comedy kind of thing. Shane will do it a lot better, is all I'm saying, with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang a number of years later, and obviously with the Lethal Weapon series. But they had signed Dice to a 3-picture deal to do a series of Ford Fairlane movies, and Diller pulled the plug. This is the end of Dice's movie star career, and they killed it on purpose. Like I said, the audience loved him. It tested through the roof. It was a 3-picture deal. He was at the top of the world, Ma. This is what he always dreamed of doing, and they fucked him. And he has nothing else to do but go back to doing stand-up. And that's what he does. He does he goes back to doing what he knows. In 1993, he does the largest pay-per-view, no apologies. He does 250,000 homes taking in pay-per-view to see him perform. So it's not like he's beaten financially, but he has a problem. And the problem is he likes to gamble. And he likes to go to Vegas, and he likes to go to Caesar's Palace, and he likes to go to the Tangiers, and he likes John Gilbert. He likes to go to these gambling places. And this is his system. He will play blackjack, and he will own the table. In other words, he will play 6 hands simultaneously, him being with one hand, and then 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000 for 6 hands total, or 30,000 a hand. And he would play the other 5. Nobody else is sitting there. There are nights when, and this is not talking out of school, there are 3 nights at Caesars, 3 consecutive nights where he loses 700,000 per night. He loses $2.1 million in 3 nights at Caesars. There are nights when he wins $2.1 million at Caesars. But this particular event, the 3 nights, just absolutely shocking. And he just blows it off because there are nights where he goes in and runs the table for hours and hours and hours, winning millions of dollars. He could take $20, which he takes from Hot Tub Johnny. I don't know if you got a picture of Hot Tub Johnny, one of his sidekicks. Hot Tub Johnny was one of his wheels. There was Hot Tub Johnny. He will go in there, borrow $20 from Hot Tub Johnny, and come out with $350,000. He will then, when he sees a homeless person, give them $5,000 in cash. If he sees a guy on the strip in a wheelchair, he will give him $5,000 in cash. This is just him and the person. This is what he did. Whether you feel that that's good or not, that's up to you. But this is the way Dice rolled. Like he said, he wanted to be an actor. He didn't care that much about the comedy, but he gets hooked on this gambling thing, and it really, really wreaks financial havoc upon him. Let me just put it that way. Yeah, he will win 450,000 playing blackjack on one night, but he will lose $250,000 in an hour. The first night he signs with Bally's, he goes in and loses $250,000 within an hour of signing a multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal with Bally's, and they will back him. They will back him. At 60, he'll have a heart attack, but I mean, a big gamble. I bet $50. Yeah, me too. Again, you've got this situation where, Kinison is bad mouthing him, and they're both going on Stern, and some of it is just comedy gold. I mean, it just went back and forth for so many years, him doing this, that it was just, it was just really great. But, just to get back to where he goes with his career, I think it's 1995, 1996, he hooks up with Kathy Moriarty to do a CBS. Oh yeah, that's Hot Tub Johnny on the left, and that's his wife Trini on the right, Dice's wife. But that's his real hair, Hot Tub Johnny. That's his. I swear to God, that's the real hair of Hot Tub Johnny, who was one of his crew members. who, wingman, or whatever you want to call it. Let me just see here. Yeah, look at that. Look, if you could blow that up, that's the legendary Hot Tub Johnny. Wow, wow, wow. Um, That's kind of interesting. Anyway, so Hot Tub Johnny and him are still rolling around, and he comes back to LA and he hooks up with Kathy Moriarty to do this CBS sitcom called Bless This House. It's a straightforward sitcom. He hates it, but he needs the money. And I think it lasts like 2 years or something. And then he's out of that sitcom pretty quickly. But he's yeah, it's an interesting. That's Wednesdays. Dude, there's a great promotion for it. I think it's supposed to be like the King of Queens or something. I don't really remember, but I think that was the tone, or like Married with Children, 1995. I think it did 16 episodes for that particular thing. But look, he gets into some other things in 1995. He's really looking to deal with his gambling addiction, and he doesn't really work for like 10 years. And for 10 years, I want to say, well, there is something that happens in 1992. He opens for Guns N' Roses at the Hollywood Bowl here in Pasadena before 100,000 people, and then he becomes best friends with Guns N' Roses, which is kind of interesting. But in 2011, he's kind of on the balls of his ass. And he gets a call. Yeah, there's Guns N' Roses. There's Duff McKagan and Slash, two guys I know from Guns N' Roses. And Dice will actually be instrumental in putting the band back together. He runs into Slash, I believe, in Buenos Aires or something. They're both doing gigs in South America somewhere. And he tells Slash to take down the negative tweets about the douchey lead singer, and he does, and he turns it into a positive, and they reunite Guns N' Roses, and they kind of thank Dice for putting that together, which is true, which is kind of true. So Dice gets divorced, and he's raising his two sons. He's trying to keep the house in L.A., which they've had. He ends up with custody of the kids, by the way. There's a picture of the kids. They're not fully grown, but they will be. And they're both musicians. They form a rock band together. With the kid Max on the left is a drummer, and the kid on the right, Dylan, is a guitar player. I think Max is still a musician. He actually opened for his father as a comic. I don't know what they're doing right this second, but both of them get into show business. Both of them get into show business. And 2011, he's desperate for money, and a guy calls him out of the blue. And people had heard. There are people that love Dice, and I know this sounds hard to believe, but there are people who really love Dice, and I'm one of them. I mean, I see through the thing. I get it. I get the act. I always loved him, for what he did. I mean, as a performer. And maybe whatever he did to himself, obviously, with the gambling. But look, people have other vices who are not alive. Many of the comics that we're talking about. But in 2011, he gets a call from Doug Ellen at Entourage. They're in season 8, and Doug Ellen wants to help him out, and he says, "I will give you all of season 8 to develop this character." Which he does. And season 8, which is the final season of Entourage, he ends up, it's really funny. He ends up doing the voice of this animated gorilla with Johnny Drama, the two of them. And it's going to become a big Simpsons type of animated show. And before it airs, Dice. This is the plot line of Dice's run on Entourage, and he plays himself. He plays Dice, and the voiceover is him in a studio with Johnny Drama doing these two animated characters. And Dice says to Johnny Drama, "We have to walk now, or we're never going to get paid." And he convinces Johnny Drama to go on strike with him, so they could get mad money, because he says they're going to screw us afterwards. and him and Johnny Drama walk off the show. And in fact, Dice is right. They give him the real money that they deserve, whatever, $10,000 to $20,000 a week. And Johnny Drama's ripping his hair out because he doesn't want to, fuck over the show and ruin his career. But Dice is all through season 8, and he's absolutely marvelous. In 2008, at this time, 2011 rather, season 8, in 2011, a guy sees him doing this on HBO on Entourage, and gives him a call, and he wants him to read for him. This is 2 years later, 2013. And the guy's name is a fellow Jew from Brooklyn named Woody Allen, who knows again what he's going through. He knows who Dice is, having been a former stand-up himself. He gets it, and he has him come in and read for this part for a movie called Blue Jasmine. And Dice nails the part of this film. This is a award-winning film with Alec Baldwin, with Louis C.K. The star of the film is Cate Blanchett, who wins an Academy Award for it. And he plays the brother-in-law, the ex-brother-in-law of Cate Blanchett. Here he is with Alec Baldwin. And he nails this character. It's not a comic performance, straight drama. Alec Baldwin is like a Bernie Madoff, this Ghana hedge fund investor. Dice's character hits the lotto for $250,000, and Baldwin takes his money in a phony investment scheme, and he ends up broke, and he's got to do lay pipe in Alaska to survive. Breaks up his marriage and everything else. This is his wife at the time of them hitting the lottery. Dice underplays this thing, but he plays it as blue collar, luggy Dice. And Woody Allen put this guy where he should have been. Now it's only a character actor, and he's very happy. He's overjoyed that Woody did this for him, and he did it for himself because he had the chops to pull this off. Woody's not going to carry you, and he's in there with Cate Blanchett. He's in there with Alec Baldwin, and this movie is fantastic. By the way, in case anyone's not seen Blue Jasmine, it really is. It really is a fascinatingly Bobby Cannavale, who he bonds with, and they will do a vinyl together on HBO, which is where I was going with this thing. In 2016, Mick Jagger is a producer, along with Marty Scorsese. This will allow Dice to do vinyl with Bobby Cannavale, and will also allow him to do other things. 2016 is vinyl. On HBO, where he is also fantastic. I mean, if you can get a chance to see vinyl after you see Blue Jasmine, you'll see what this guy intended to do. And then he gets a call from someone to do this remake of A Star Is Born with Lady Gaga. And Lady Gaga, this is 2018. Lady Gaga's in this thing with Bradley Cooper. Here's the cover of the movie poster. And he beats out, for this part, beats out Ray Liotta and Robert De Niro. This is Emmis. This is inside Hollywood stuff, folks. And becomes the part of Lady Gaga's father. If you haven't seen this, I strongly recommend it. It's a great remake of the original movie, which I think had Chris Christopherson in it. And what do I want to say? Bette Midler or something. Anyway, so he nails this thing, gets a SAG nomination for this, and the entire story of redemption here begins to unfold, of a man who had started with nothing, worked his way to the top of the world, was destroyed by outside forces, and then built, with the help of others and his own natural talent, his way back to some semblance of dignity and grace in the profession that he wanted to be in. The original, James Mason, Judy Garland. That's going back. But it's such an incredible redemptive story in my mind, and in fact, apparently other people's minds, because somebody wanted to make a biopic of Dice Clay, and the guy who was supposed to play him got me too'd, and that was the end of that. And let's see some guesses as to who would play Dice Clay. Tell me in the chat who you believe Andrew Dice Clay would be played by, in this biopic that they pulled the plug on, again for cultural reasons. Again, thank you, Wassup. Thank you so much. The I'll save you the trouble. It was James Franco, not John Travolta, James Franco, and he got the plug pulled on him. But it's so funny because Dice tries to put together a remake of The Nutty Professor, and Eddie Murphy will eventually put the remake together. But he contacts Jerry Lewis in Vegas, and Jerry Lewis says, "You want to do The Nutty Professor?" He goes, "Yeah, I want to do a remake of it." And he says, "Well, why you?" And he does his impersonation of Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis says, "I know who you are. Let's see if we could put this together." So Dice stupidly says, "I hear you're difficult to work with." And of course, anytime you say that to a guy who's difficult to work with, they go crazy because they're difficult to work with. And they just go, "Who said that? Where did you hear that? Why do you think that?" And Jerry Lewis does the same thing. So they put these meetings together to do the remake of The Nutty Professor, and they get a deal. And here's Jerry Lewis with Andrew Dice Clay, and the movie gets greenlit, and Dice is just flabbergasted that he's going to be doing the remake of The Nutty Professor, and Jerry Lewis will be in it in the cameo. And he, gets a phone call one day, and it's Jerry Lewis. And he's flipping out. And he goes, "What is it, Jerry?" He goes, "They're fucking us." He goes, "What?" He goes, "They're screwing us on the money. We got to walk." And it becomes the source of the episode I described to you just now with Johnny Drama. This happened years before, where Jerry Lewis cannot get the money that he's demanding for the remake of The Nutty Professor. And because of that, he pulls the plug on the entire picture. And Dice wants to shoot himself in the head. And he learned a valuable lesson at that time about people who are hard to work with. And indeed, Jerry Lewis had that reputation. And these reputations that they have are for a reason. They're not just people, slinging it around. There are people who are difficult to work with. And apparently, somehow, Eddie Murphy must have pulled it together because he did eventually do the remake. And now, about Dice's stuff with Eddie Murphy, at the lowest ebb, Dice is driving down Olympic Boulevard here in LA as he's at his lowest ebb, and the media is trying to kill him politically and socially. They're writing these articles about him. He can't get arrested, and a car starts honking in back of him. He pulls over. It's a convertible. Guy gets out. It's Eddie Murphy, and he says, "Don't let them get to you. Don't let them beat you, man." And Eddie Murphy pumps him up, and he said, "They try to do the same thing to me when I put out my Raw film. They came after me." And he said they didn't come as hard as they came for you, but they were flexing their muscles trying to get me. And Eddie Murphy, on his own, just sits there with him in his car, supporting him and talking to him to try to get his head straight. And Eddie Murphy's bigger than Dice. He was before Dice. This is a guy that Dice looked up to, was Murphy. And Murphy, putting out his blue HBO or concert film, the concert film that Dice has, Dice Rules is the name of it, and it's the Madison Square Garden episodes. And these protests again start, and 20th Century Fox dumps the movie. And this is a piece of gold, absolute piece of comedy gold at Madison Square Garden with a crowd. They sell it off to Seven Arts. They don't have this is a poster for the movie. This is the concert movie. And they dump it on Seven Arts. It doesn't have the promotional money that 20th Century Fox does to put it out. And it's kind of extremely difficult to find that, and extremely difficult to find Ford Fairlane. And I'm talking about when you go to Prime and it's unavailable, when you go to all these different places, the only way to get these films, I've said this before on the other channel, is to get DVDs, because they will take a film politically and remove it from the planet Earth. And you will not be happy when you're really trying to find it, because they have other motivations. They really have other motivations. But I wanted to show maybe some pictures of Dice with some celebrities There's a bunch of them when he was coming up that I wanted to show if we have some of these people that were his friends. These people weren't just posing with him. These are people he gets invited by Sylvester Stallone to a barbecue at Stallone's house. And Dice goes over there, and in the backyard is Stallone with his family, and Stallone himself is flipping burgers. And he just hangs out with Stallone. Absolutely no showbiz ego at all. And the two of them just bond in Stallone's backyard. There are other people. I mean, he worships Dangerfield to the end of Dangerfield's life. Um, yeah, there's Rodney. Rodney really helped him make it. Really a godsend for him, and he was for other people too. Rodney. This is a funny photo. Um, yeah. Anyway, so Dice. Oh, that's cool. That's what Travolta. That's really nice. That's really nice. He really worshipped Travolta. He thought he was just, was able to do singing, dancing, everything, you know. Uh, but in the 1991 release of the Dice concert film, really was a dagger in the heart. The killing of it by them, it really was. And then the passing of Sam when Sam died, it really hurt Dice quite a bit. Sam's death, which we're going to get into next week in the Sam Kinison episode. But at the age of 60, yeah, there is a Sam. The age of 60, he has a heart attack, and then in 2019 is he has a heart attack, and he quit smoking for 10 years. But then when his parents died, he began smoking again, to the detriment of himself and his health. And at one point in 2021, he develops Bell's palsy. And it's really ironic because everyone as a kid growing up would use Bell's palsy as a punchline to a joke. Like, hey, your mother's got Bell's palsy. Ew! And he actually develops it. And it does go away. He only has it for about 6 months. And the left side of his face is completely frozen. And his mouth is open. And the thing is, he said it was from stress, because his nut was about $50,000 a month for 30 years that he'd have to come up with just the overhead for his lifestyle was about 50,000 a year. Um, and the stress caused him to have Bell's palsy. But it goes away. He goes away and he hooks up with Eleanor Kerrigan, again, who was a fiance at one point, and now she is his current girlfriend. I still think. I mean, because Valerie Vasquez ended in 2014, and I think he hooked up with Eleanor, who never really went out of his life, who I think is now opening for him when he does perform. I think this is Valerie Vasquez, who is a hairdresser who he meets at the Playboy Mansion, and she moves in with him and her mother, who used to have a concession stand at Dodger Stadium, two Mexicans. And I don't know if they made his life a living hell, but he said that she was a great mother for his kids. They weren't hers, but they were his, and he always respected her for uh, um, being a good mother to the kids for the short time that they were together, which was about 4 years when the kids were teenagers. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but I wanted to tell you one thing about this thing. He had a friend named Downtown Ronnie, and Downtown Ronnie was a gangster. Downtown Ronnie was part of his crew. And during a period of time in the 90s, the early 90s, Downtown Ronnie took him for a sit down with an unnamed Brooklyn social club mobster who I never learned the name of. And the mobster got involved in the pay per view special that I talked about earlier in the show. The mobster said, we can have your billboard for the pay per view special and how to get it on the side of every Teamster truck in the Northeast or possibly United States. I'm not really sure. And for that, we will take a piece. And he goes along with it with his father, and they end up making. They pay him out. He said he never saw the poster, the billboard on the side of the trucks, so it may just have been a shakedown. But they end up paying out the mob like $300,000 from that pay per view special, and he never hears from them again. until this thing where downtown Ronnie says they want to have a sit down with you and he doesn't want to go. And he says, "Why do I have to go?" He says, "Because he's asking you to come." And he says, "I'm not getting involved in this." He refuses to go for this second sit down. And he finds out, he calls up his Uncle Jay. His Uncle Jay is a mob attorney. And Uncle Jay says, "Let me look into it and get to the bottom of it." So Uncle Jay calls him back and says, "You're being claimed by Long Island and Brooklyn simultaneously." And Dice goes, "What?" He says, "I don't even know these guys. I don't have anything to do with the mob." He says, "Unbeknownst to you, the Long Island mob and the Brooklyn mob are both claiming ownership of you, and they want to have a sit down with you to work out finances of how you're going to kick back to them." There's no other way to say it. Um, so he refuses to do this. And this goes on for, he has to hire additional security. There's guys who are sitting in like the ringside tables at his shows, three beefy guys who are mobsters, and he's freaking out over this thing. And these mobsters are following him around, and Uncle Jay is taking his time. Well, he thinks so, but Uncle Jay is actually trying to deal with this. And this is after 2 years of this, people. Hold on. Uncle Jay calls him up and says it's been resolved. And he says, "How?" And he says, "The mobster who was claiming you in Brooklyn has died of unexplained causes having nothing to do with Dice." The head guy, I don't know who it was because he didn't really mention it. He never mentioned, Dice never mentioned the guy's name. So I don't really know who it was, but it was a godfather or family head of one of the Brooklyn crime families. And that guy died. And that was the end of the claim. I don't know what happened to Long Island, but that was the end of the feud of the claim, and alleviated Dice of having to have these sit down with these guys. And that was the end of the mob shakedown. And they were attempting to get, latch onto him, and they could have shaken him down. And I have to believe it had something to do with the gambling, because that was one of his vices. Now, Dice creates a Showtime special called Dice, a reality show that I highly recommend. This show is Dice again playing himself in Vegas with an actress as a wife, and Kevin Corrigan is hysterical as Milkshake. Here's the wife, and Dice is playing himself, but it's all self-deprecating Dice. It's Dice, who's on the balls of his ass, struggling Dice with gambling problems, financial problems. The kids are in it problems. Kevin Corrigan plays a hot tub Johnny named Milkshake as a sidekick. It is absolutely fantastic. And the best episode of all, if anybody wants to see this, is Adrian Brody shows up as himself because he's doing a one-man show as Dice, and he wants to not as Dice, but as a character like Dice. And he wants to use his method acting to learn as much about Dice. I'm cracking up thinking about it. He wants to use his method acting to learn as much about Dice as possible. And during the course of the episode, he becomes Dice. He literally becomes Dice in the course of the episode. And it is brilliantly funny. It was on Showtime. You could find it, on Prime. It is a great. It's not a reality show. It's a series, but man, is it funny. The girlfriend is denounces denounces Dice. She's harsh on him, and he's running back and forth, gambling at both. A lot of the stories in real life come out in this series. Some of them I've discussed, which is absolutely true. There is a opening scene where Dice goes to a furniture store with his wife to buy a easy chair for her aunt, and the furniture salesman says, "Let me be your bodyguard." And he says, "I don't need a bodyguard." He goes, "Yes, you do." He goes, "No, I don't. I really don't." And he says, "I think I could take you in a fight." And he goes, "What?" And he says, "Yeah, let's fight." And the furniture salesman convinces Dice to have a fist fight with him in the furniture store, and Dice kicks his ass. Now, it turns out that this was a true story. When Dice lived in Boca, his parents moved to Boca. Dice went to buy a TV at an appliance store for his kid for his room. His wife told him to go to the appliance store. And the TV salesman said, I should be your bodyguard, and berates him and gets into a fist fight with Dice Clay to prove that he can take him in a fight. And Dice beats his ass and leaves the appliance store with the TV. Anyway, some great comedy on this show. And Kevin Corrigan is fantastic. And there's a lot of people. And Lorraine Bracco plays the casino owner, very tough casino owner. It's fantastic. It really is fantastic. But I hope you enjoyed a lot of this on Dice. I mean, he's still going. He's still doing it. He, had a podcast. He's still performing. I mean, the guy is a show business legend. He really is. I mean, I know he has a lot of haters out there, but a lot of people don't get it. He's also in the Entourage movie, by the way. I hope that he continues to get these parts like Star is Born and Blue Jasmine, because that's where he can really show you self-trained. He never went to school, never went to acting school. Everything he's done. And I'll just tell you this as maybe a final story of Dice. He, in senior year in high school, I think it was a senior year, it's one of these guys who was shaving early. So maybe it's his junior year. He grows a full beard, and he's wearing sunglasses, and he's got his hair fairly long, like I showed in that photo. And he, in his high school class, the guy doesn't recognize him, the teacher, because I guess he cut school so much, he doesn't recognize him. And he goes out in the hallway with the teacher, and he says, get against the wall. And he shows him a federal badge. And he convinces the teacher that he's an undercover drug agent trying to bust drug dealers in the high school. And he throws him up against the locker and frisks his own teacher up and down, who then turns around and says, I'd like to work with you in any way possible to help help to help the drug war. And he says, all right, I'll get back to you. And he leaves, and he doesn't even go back to class. And the drug dealing Dice convinced the teacher that he was working undercover in the high school. You can't make it up. Natalie, you can't make this up. It cracks me up. There's so much stuff about Dice, but one of the, I'll just tell you this. He goes to he's in a casino in Vegas, and there is Wayne Newton. And Wayne Newton, as he had promised, one day would introduce him to Frank. And he's at the bar, Dice, and Wayne Newton comes over and he says, this is it. And Dice is shitting in his pants. This is beyond his wildest dreams. He's going to meet Frank Sinatra, and he becomes absolutely petrified and speechless. And Frank Sinatra says, sit down, let me buy you a drink with my family, introduces him to his entire family, has Dice sit down with his entire family and have some food with him. Dice can according to Dice, could barely speak. He was so nervous about meeting his idol. This would be the equivalent of him meeting Elvis. And he takes him to a separate booth after this, and he sits down with him, orders a drink, him and Frank Sinatra. And Frank Sinatra basically gives him the same advice that Eddie Murphy gave him. Don't let them get you down. They want you to be destroyed. These are evil motherfuckers. They're not the ticket holders. They get free tickets to these shows. Your responsibility are to the people who spend their hard-earned money to come and see you perform so they can relax from their stinking jobs. That's where your loyalty has to lie. And Sinatra lays it out there to Dice, like in even more detail than Eddie Murphy did, and really supports him at one of the lowest moments of his life. It was really heartfelt, and Dice took it that way. He couldn't believe what Sinatra was, how warm he was, and he said, if you ever need any help, please feel free to contact me. And then he thinks about it, and he says, you know what? Don't contact me. Contact Wayne Newton. So he can contact me. And Dice finally loosens up and cracks up laughing at Sinatra's joke. But wow, wow. There's a reason Sinatra is Sinatra. And that story for me, and there's many other stories about Sinatra, but that one regarding Dice, I thought was really representational of who Sinatra was to other performers in the business. And look, we could go on and on and on about Dice. There's plenty of other stories, but I think we're at a point here, which an hour 45 into the show. I don't know if people have any what do you call here, super chats or questions or anything. If you have any questions, I could maybe answer some of them. I don't know if I have any answers, but he ends up on the cover of Penthouse, which is kind of odd for a men's magazine in 1991. He might have been. Hey, thanks, Lucy. He might have been only the second person. I think George Burns was the only other man ever to be on the cover of Penthouse. Oh yeah, there it is. Oh yeah, he was. I think that's the second time only in Penthouse history. And he goes and hangs out with Guccione. He goes to his apartment in New York, which has a swimming pool in the middle of the living room. Some incredible digs that Bob Guccione had at the height of Penthouse, which was killing it at that time. Um, but yeah, I mean, just the stories that overlap. I mean, the Golden Gate Motor Inn was someplace in our neighborhood where people went for trysts. Nobody lived there because everyone lived in apartments nearby. It wasn't really a vacation area. Heather, thank you. Um, but yeah, I mean, hopefully Dice will be able to rise again and put out an album. If you want to listen to The Day the Laughter Died, it's difficult to find. I mean, they sent me a thank you so much, Blitzen. They sent me a promo copy that I got from back then, and I still have it to this day. The promo copy of this, The Day the Laughter Died, produced by Rick Rubin, and it is a double. It's a double album, and holy cow, is it funny! I mean, he's just killing the people in the audience. It's kind of unmerciful, but it really is Dice Unchained. Really is Dice Unchained. But yeah, I think. If the mob had gotten their hooks into Dice, I think he could have gone back to Sinatra. Um, and I don't think the mob is the reason Sinatra is Sinatra. By the way, that's a little crazy. Sinatra had more talent than any person that ever sang before, not because of the mob. But yeah, I mean the same thing with Dice. But if they could get their hooks into you, they will just be a leech off of you financially. Oh, by the way, in the 2011. MTV inexplicably lifted their lifetime ban against the Dice. Oh, lifting the ban, 2011. Thank you, Pew Pew. Um, and these. It's so funny because I contacted Grok this morning and asked her to recite some of the nursery rhymes for for Andrew Dice Clay. I don't know if this still works. Let me see if this will work here. Hold on. Can you recite some of Andrew Dice Clay's nursery rhymes for me? Sure, here's one in Dice's classic style. Jack and Jill went up the hill, both with a buck and a quarter. Jill came down with 250. Oh, that's Dice for you. Raw and dirty. Want another one? That doesn't sound like him. It sounds like someone else. Do you have an actual Dice poem? You're right. I was riffing a bit too loosely there. My bad for not nailing Dice's voice. Andrew Dice Clay's actual nursery rhymes from his 80s and 90s stand up, like on Recorded at Dangerfields, are way more explicit and in your face. Here's one closer to his real deal. Hickory dickory dock. The chick was on my clock. I said, yo, babe, let's rock. And she was down for the shock. That's straight from his raunchy, leather jacketed vibe. Crude, rhythmic, and unapologetic. If you want another one or have a specific show or album in mind, let me know, and I'll keep it legit. That doesn't sound anything like him. Did you make that up? Okay, you're calling me out, and I hear ya. I did try to channel Andrew Dice Clay's vibe, but I'll admit,
That last one was my attempt to mimic his style while keeping it tame enough for this chat. His actual nursery rhymes from shows like Recorded at Dangerfields in 1989 are much rawer and packed with explicit punchlines that don't hold back. Think X-rated twists on nursery rhymes with his signature Brooklyn swagger. For example, his real version goes something like, Hickory dickory dock, the chick was loving my, you get the idea. It's too explicit for me to quote fully here. I don't have the exact transcript of every rhyme handy, and I was improvising to match his crude, rhythmic flow. If you want, I can focus on a specific album or performance to track down more accurate examples, or dig into what makes his style so distinct. What do you say?
You're not even coming close. I don't even know what to say anymore. Oh, I mean, why can't you just say one of his poems? Oh.
All right, I'm striking out here, and I'm sorry for the miss. I get it. You want the real Andrew Dice Clay. No fluff, no made up stuff. His nursery rhymes, like from his 80s or 90s, are super explicit, and I've been dancing around the raunch to keep it chill. For instance, his bit from the 1989 Dangerfield set twists rhymes like Little Miss Muffet, Licensed to Ill, She Was Chillin' with the Thrill, and I'm the Good. Do you want me to keep going with another one of his filthy classics, or focus on something else about Dice?
I think I've had it with you because I can't get you to do any Dice poems. What's the point? Why would I even talk to you? Oh, goodbye.
I hear ya. I fumbled the ball on getting this Dice poems right, and I'm sorry for letting you down. His real stuff is so raw, it's tough to quote without crossing.
I can't take it anymore. And yeah, anyway, so I did that this morning, and that's what I got. She's like making believe that she's doing the actual poems. And then finally, she keeps breaking down, saying, I'm sorry, I didn't really give you the real poems. I'm sorry. Uh, Look, what is so difficult? What does she care if it's dirty? What's it to Grok? Anyway, I hope you could find the original poems. You could look at the MTV Video Awards where he does a couple of them. Yeah, she wakes me up at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's absolutely true, Pam. I don't know why this thing is out of control. There's also the dirty grok. That's a separate one. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, Sparger knows, whoever Sparger is. Um, but you people know them. They're part of American culture. And the reason I wanted to do Dice was because he literally was the first victim of cancel culture. And as far as I know, based on my existence and research, this was a guy whose career was canceled because of. Hey, lady, I'm working over here. Would you get off the line? I'm trying to do something. Sorry about that. Anyway, um, Grok is not allowed to cuss. Yeah, Tom Green. There is a show with Dice and Tom Green. Tom Green is a relatively new. Yeah, this is him, Tom Green, with an obscure comic in between there. But Tom Green has an interview show with Dice that is absolutely hysterical. And apparently they're very close friends. Tom Green, not the best drinker in the world, had to get sent home from Jay Leno one time here in Burbank, and then fell right on his stone steps, breaking his teeth and his jaw, completely drunk out of his mind. But that being said, Joan Rivers is gone. Tom is still with us. Dice is still with us. And if you can find the Adrian Brody episode, you will laugh your ass off. And, yeah, keep putting them up there, Blitzen. That's right. That's right. I think you'll enjoy this episode. If you could send it to your friends, that would help. And I miss Joan also. I really do. I mean, Joan Rivers told me an incredible story because my brother married a girl, and her father was Joan's secret lover. And that was her dad, I guess my sister-in-law's dad, who I helped erect a tent during the wedding because it was raining. He was a contractor, and that was Joan's. She said the guy that she loved the most in her life. I was in the green room at Politically Incorrect at the Bill Maher Show, and Joan Rivers was there, and we talked about this guy who was in her memoir, I think. Hickory Dickory Dock. Yeah, maybe we could do an episode on Joan Rivers someday. Just to mix the genders up a little bit. I do want to get into some of the women comics that we can explore. But Joan definitely deserves her own episode, I think. There's a lot of stuff about Joan that people don't know. which I can get into. But we got a long list of people to get to. So it's going to be a fun ride. And look, this is just the beginning. So I don't know. You're going to pass it on, tell your other people. I don't even know what we're doing. But it seems like something. So we're going to do Kinnison next week. And then, like I said, Jackie Martling has somehow found some underwear and a shirt. And he's going to be on September 10th. And he is going to bring some of the Stern stuff with him for the show, if he can get his shit together, Jackie. And then we'll be able to show you, hopefully, Jackie's notes from the Stern shows, and we'll prove once and for all that Jackie wrote the entire show. And we're going to do an episode on Dangerfield and how we used to go as lampoon people to Dangerfields. All of these stories have some personal connection. So um, that's the reason I'm doing them. There is a connection between me and these stories. So Smith and Smith, Smith and Wesson. Okay. I think how long is that? Is that a couple hours, or where are we here? Yeah, it's about 2 hours. That's all I have strength for at this point. I got to do some other shit. So yeah, on Friday we'll be over at the other thing there with the news, America's Untold Stories. Oh yeah, I forgot about Tribal Coffee. Thank you. This coffee. Let me show you something. This particular coffee right here. Like I said, this is grown with volcanic ash by pygmies somewhere in Papua New Guinea. Grower, processor. We produce the source of our coffee beans, and with the fertile volcanic soils of the Western Highlands province of Papua New Guinea, this pygmy tribe has cornered the tribal coffee market. I don't know if they're cannibals or not. They may just be pygmies. Cannibals may live in another area, but the pygmies may be involved in this. Our coffee brings out the exquisite rich taste of the region's coffee, known for its high citrus, zesty fragrance, and dry coca notes. It is perfectly balanced cup of premium PNG 100% Arabica mountain coffee. Arabica? Suited for all your drinking occasions. Simply choose the roast and grind suited for your preferred cup of coffee, whether it be espresso, cappuccino, or plunger. Plunger sounds really scary. You will enjoy the hand selected, perfectly roasted bean over and over and over again. From our trees to your cup, tribal coffee shown here. And there's a secret code. This is my bag. You're not getting this bag. I got a full bag here to work on. This is what I've been drinking here. This is tribal. Mm, it's really zesty. Maybe it is some sort of high citrus. Maybe that's what I like about it. Okay, so try it. It's 10% off. You get the secret code Mark G. Get it with a bag of biltong, and you could party all weekend going through Dice memorabilia, Dice stories, Dice tapes, Dice shows, and and really kick back and enjoy these two products because they are supporting the show right now and have been supporting the show since day one. So I'd like to give back and by supporting them. And that being said, I'm going to drink coffee. The plunger is what I call my Johnson. All right, David, way to go with the humor. Don't quit your day job, bro. Okay, at this point, I think that's about it. Also, watch Crime Story if you could find it back in the day on NBC. I think you'll see a different early Dice Clay that will really surprise you by his acting chops. And I don't know how many people are watching this right now, but oh yeah, here's the thing. It's Dennis Farina. This show, Michael Mann, my friends. This is before Heat. This is after Miami Vice. Highly recommend this show, and it's really well done. Really, really well done. Okay, I got to get out of here because I got to do some shit. But we'll be over on the other channel on Friday with the news with Eric, and then we'll come back here. We'll do the show on Tuesday. Oh yeah, it wouldn't kill you to like and subscribe. Thank you. Wait a second, don't leave yet. You got to do the liking and subscribe part of it. It helps us get bigger guests than Jackie the Joke Man. Not that Jackie gives a shit, but it would help us get some major people on the show, unless I run out of stories, which I don't think I'm going to run out of anyway. I don't know if you like the guest better or the stories better. Please let me know. Um, and we'll do a lot of stories, but some people like the guests. I don't know. I like the stories. I'd like the guests. It depends who the guest is. If we can riff together, and skip the coffee. Pygmies, yuck. Yeah, it's a tough joke to really swallow. It really is. It's a difficult joke. Yeah, you're in the wrong channel, whoever you are. Anyway, um, subscribe, pass it on, forward it, whatever you people do. I don't understand what to tell you. Natalie can explain it to you after the show. Natalie gets it, and we're going to be back here next Wednesday with a serious deep dive on Sam Kinison, another guy who I dealt with personally. So we'll see you next week. I hope you're back next week. Thank you.